Hello, welcome back to our Let's Code. We are again working on our static site generator. In our first video, we kind of dug into Eleventy and worked on figuring that out. In our second episode, we tried to see whether Eleventy would meet our needs. And then since then, I've gone ahead and converted over to using Eleventy, and I will go ahead and show you what I've done. So here is the site. So we have some content on here. This is mostly just placeholder until we get real stuff going, but we have Eleventy running in the background, and we have our VS Code. So we're going to go ahead and jump in here, and I will show you some of the changes that I've made. So here is our site structure. So we have folders for each of our sections. We have our CSS, and we have our index page. So we have a markup page for our index. We have some of the info in our front matter. We supply a date, and you can see here we give it a layout called frontpage.ngk. So one of the things I did was switch from using liquid layout to using the Nunjux layout engine, and Nunjux had a few features that I really liked. One, it's more geared for JavaScript as opposed to, I believe Liquid was around Ruby. But it also had a kind of a system I believe they call blocks, that I'll show you in just a second. So basically, you see this code here gets turned into actually this code right here. So inside our includes is where we have all of our templates. So we have front page here, and so you can see here it extends base.ngk. So we're going to jump into that first. So basically, this is the file that kind of gives us our overall structure. So it's where we create our HTML document. It's where we do our header, and we create our sidebar and all that. And then we have a block where we can put stuff into our sidebar, and a block where we can put our content. And the reason for that is each of these sections are pretty much the same. We have but we have information on the right, on the left, and on the right. We kind of want to change what's in here, but we don't necessarily want to change our menuing and our overall layout. So by doing this as our base layout with these blocks, we can look in our front page. Basically, this just says we extend our base, and then we spit out our in main, we just put out content. Safe basically make sure that all your URLs and whatnot are safe. Then our sidebar, we basically put the selfie image and, a little bit of text. So if we look into our about section, it's very similar. So here we have our title and publish date that we go ahead and put on each page. And then we have our menu, and then we have contact me section. So here you can see the contact me section. Here's our menu section. So basically we grab the about collection So that is all of the documents in the About folder. And I'll show you how that's kind of set up. We loop through and create a link, given the URL and the page title. And then the whatever page we're on, we will go ahead and spit out the content up here. And we've done the same thing for coding and gaming. And then if we jump into our About section, so here's our index. We have our front matter where we give the title, we give a date, so that our date is not dependent on the file date, which is there by default. And then we have this about.json, so that basically says everything in this about folder. We use the about njk layout, and we give it the about tag. And that basically says that each of these files is going to show up in our about collection. So all of that works really well. I'm really happy with this. Another quick thing we did, if we go to something like, I think we haven't done it here, by default, we spit out a date. So I'm going to go into our, I think I was encoding. We spit out the page.date. This is the default format. Sorry. But what we actually want is a date more like this. So here you see we're using a filter that takes the date and formats it. Now, Eleventy doesn't have a built-in date filter. So there might be some that you can go plug in. But we went ahead and wrote our own. So it's actually pretty easy. So here in our eleventy.js config file, inside of our Eleventy config, we put a function called eleventyconfig.addFilter. We name the filter date. Whenever we get a date in, we bring in moment, convert it to UTC, and format it, because I am just to make sure that our dates show up the same everywhere. And then we format LL just to give this this format there. So really easy to add filters. I believe it's also easy to add what they call shortcode, which are basically functions if you want to reuse them. We may end up using that. I don't know. So that's basically what I've done so far. So one of the things that we haven't done yet is, if we look on our main page here, sorry about that, that's a notification on my phone. Okay. If you see here, we have in our menuing system what the current page is, and our current system does not do that, and we want to make sure we add that before this goes live. So when we're using Eleventy, we have a lot of variables that are on our page. So on each page we can access the current URL, what they call a file slug. So I think that's basically, so that's the file name minus the template file extension. So if we have our index MD, it'd just be index. If we have this site MD, it'll be this site. File path. So I believe this is basically your URL and how you'll access the file in the output. And file path stream, I believe, is the source. So this is where the file comes from. So this is the source, and then this is the source with the extension removed. By default, the date is the date, but this is override by whatever we put in our front matter. So using these, it shows us that if we loop over our collections, our posts in a collection, if the page.url equals the item in your post URL, you can set your class to active. And so we can just include this little piece of code, and we should get our active class being set. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that in the About section. And I believe the template language is that. So I think they have an if and an end if, I think is what we need to do. Yep. We can go ahead and do like they did, class active. That's kind of the industry standard way of marking a link as the active link. And so okay, I think so I call it page here. I think we might be overloading the word page. Let's go ahead and change this to so I think the problem is we want to go page.url equals page.url. So what do we want to call this? So right now I'm calling it pages. Okay. Well, let's call it an about page. Because abouts doesn't make sense. And so for about page equals the page URL, we want to be using the about page URL. And we'll see if that's right. Okay. So that's not super happy with that naming, but at least it gives us the page we're on. So obviously this is not going to work for coding because we didn't put that in the same in the coding header, sorry, in the coding template, let's go ahead and do the same thing in our coding header. So again, we have the same thing where we call it pages. Coding page dot URL equals page dot URL. Then we say class equals active. And we go ahead and end our if. Oh, and we need to make sure we change to our coding page. Oh, and our coding page. Okay. So those work. We don't have anything in gaming, well, except for a typo in gaming. Let's go ahead and fix that as well. So in order for so that fix that. We don't actually have our list of things going on here. I think we actually do. We just don't have titles on those pages. So I think if we were to look, pages, there we actually have links there, but we don't have titles on the pages, so they aren't showing up yet. We'll do more about this when we actually jump into these sections. And yeah, so you can see here we have an index page that is also showing up in the list. We do want the page that you land on to be part of the list. So here my About Me is actually the index page with the title Me, so it shows up in the in our Me collection. So I'll be wanting to do the same thing in our other sections when I start filling those out. So that gives us our page highlighting. It doesn't show us our section though. So in our sections are actually in our, I believe it's in our base. We have these sections. So I think what we want to happen is to have each of these be active when the page URL starts with each of these sections, I think. Let's go look at that. Let's go ahead and spit out the page.url and just make sure that that's showing up. So about coding So each of these has starts with that, and then if we do our, so we want to go ahead and say if, and close this down. Okay, so if we say page.url starts with about. Let's see if that does it for us. Okay, there's an error in our template, looks like. The call page starts with, I thought we could just use a function. Well, we can obviously go ahead and do equals so that might what don't I have correct? So there's no error anymore. So if page URL equals, oh, I think actually we're on this. But doesn't work with these. So I think the fact that it, let's see. Am I misusing? Starts with, maybe I just mistyped. There we go. So it was simply a capitalization on our function call. We want to go ahead and get rid of this. And let's go ahead and copy these. So here we're copying and pasting this code over and over again. This is a little ugly. There's probably a better way to do this. There might be either using shortcodes or some other templating system. So like maybe we could just say we want the about link, and it starts with the about. Well, so this is something we would want to jump back into. If we were doing this, if we were doing this code twice, I would probably leave it exactly as it is. If we're doing it 3 times, that's kind of on the border. If we were doing this 5 or 6 times, absolutely we'd want something different. Right now at 3, we're kind of on, I'm kind of, I don't know, either way about it. So we're going to go ahead and leave it for now. So now we have looks like we have our menuing system in place. We want to go ahead and make sure our index has a title. Let's go ahead and put the filters on these other pages. So we'll go into coding. We have a date. We'll go ahead and add the date filter. There we see we have our date. So we still have a lot of layout stuff to do. This page is not responsive yet, but for right now, I don't even know all of the features I want. So I'm going to keep going with adding content and features, and then we will, once we get things we like, and know that these are features that I'm going to use, then I'll go ahead and spend a little time rebuilding some of these templates to make sure that they are responsive. We're going to go ahead and do gaming as well. And go ahead and add. Okay. So this is working pretty well. I'm really liking this Eleventy. I think the next thing we're going to do is go into coding and start putting in, I want to link to these videos. So in these Let's Code, I would like to be able to embed these videos you're watching here on YouTube right into this page. And so I think that's going to be the next thing we're going to do in our next episode is work on creating our templates for that, and how do we want to lay it out? How do we want that to work so that we can quickly and easily add more videos when we create them. So join me for that. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying this. This is me, kind of figuring these things out on the fly. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.